Hello from TAMIU Advanced Research and Curriculum. This video contains selected clips from the live virtual workshop Defending and Finalizing Your Thesis, which was hosted by TAMIU ARC's Writing Consultant, Franco Zamora, on April 20th, 2021. Please contact us if you have questions or concerns related to the thesis or dissertation. Thank you. I want to talk about the defense and public speaking. So this is just a brief little summary of how defense works, as well as how what to expect during the Q&A session from your committee. This first part's really about public speaking more than it is about like the actual defense itself, but it's still good to keep in mind. All of these things are just suggestions. None of them are things you absolutely have to do. There's no hard and fast, like, this is what you must do at every single defense. Really, this is more for your benefit as a public speaker or as somebody who is still going to be using public speaking tips in the future, even after your thesis. People are scared of public speaking. Why? It's physical. It's a physiological response. It's something that's totally normal. It's normal to not want to be in front of a crowd of people. It's normal to feel a bit of hostility, a bit of anxiety. And most of it comes from lack of experience or lack of good experience with public speaking. Realistically, there's not a whole lot that the committee can do to you once you get up there and start talking. The worst they can do is tell you that you're not quite ready to move on, but that's pretty rare. For the most part, there's nothing to be afraid of when it comes to talking to your committee, mostly because they already know you. There's no need to feel unfamiliar with them. There's no need to feel like you're not one of them. There's no need to feel like you don't have the answers for this, because at this stage, you're pretty much already an expert in your field. You've already mastered what you need to master. Now it's just a matter of convincing them. So public speaking general tips, you really want to practice. That's really what it comes down to. It's practice, practice, practice. And even if you're just going to be practicing by yourself, that's fine. Obviously, it's better to have somebody else tell you, yes, these are things that you missed, or maybe slow down in this part, I didn't understand. Having an audience is great, but if you just need to practice by yourself, that's fine too. You obviously want to make a lot of eye contact with the people that you're looking at. And when you're doing virtual, it's a lot easier because a lot of times there's nothing to look at except for the screen or the camera lens, but still you don't want to be looking all over the place. I highly recommend you look up at the camera or at your screen rather than look down at notes or something. Dress professionally, virtually, that includes pants. I feel like at this point we've learned that you really want to have a full ensemble that makes you feel comfortable. Speak loudly and clearly. Obviously, practice how much your microphone is going to catch if you're doing it virtually, or just how much you want to how loud you want to project if you're not going to be in a virtual room. These are some don'ts for public speaking. Don't move around too much. Again, virtually, that's not such a big deal because you're mostly going to be sitting in place and looking right at the screen. But if you are going to be in an actual physical room, I recommend you not pace. Really just stand as still as you can. Don't gesture too much. That's true even virtually. You could knock something over, or you could be too distracting. Try not to look directly just at your notes or at your screen. Make sure you look up now and then. Don't be rude to the committee. I'll come back around to this, but it's never a good idea to be rude to the committee. They do so much for you, and they really just want to help. Don't rush. Obviously, that comes with practicing. Don't go off topic. I'll come back around to that. And don't try to copy somebody else's style of public speaking. If you want to emulate someone else's style, if you want to emulate parts of their style, that's good. But you want to make sure that you feel as comfortable as you can as yourself reading what you've got. And these are more public speaking tips. The first part of this is what you're talking about. That includes the order of what it is, the length of time that it takes you to get through it, and the meaning of it. What does it actually mean? when you can learn all the ins and outs of what it is that you're saying. In this case, what you're saying might be a little bit different than what your thesis actually is. Remember that you don't have to present every little thing in your thesis. You're really just presenting what's in front of you that particular day. So make sure that you know exactly what order it's going to be in, exactly how long it's going to take you to get through it, and exactly what it means in case somebody asks you questions and you don't want to trip up. Most theses take about 10 to 15 minutes. I've seen some go as long as 20 or 25 minutes. I really haven't seen any that have gone longer than that of the student actually speaking, although I did see one student go almost a full 30 minutes before they kind of said, well, we want to break for questions. Technically, you have 3 hours to complete your thesis to do your defense, but nobody takes 3 hours, really. I think that I've seen at most the committee ask questions and deliberate for about 30 minutes, and I haven't seen anything go past an hour, 15 minutes. So it's really all about how much you want to say. The second part of this is the delivery, or the how of your presentation. Again, we already talked about volume and tone, or volume and pace. So the tone is the kind of different one here. You want to make sure that you're speaking in a friendly tone, that you're speaking in an approachable tone, that you're speaking in a tone that it conveys what you want to convey, that it's something that you want your audience to feel with you. How do you want them to react? That's really what it comes down to. Volume and pace, again, this goes just towards the how much control do you want to have over what you're saying, and are you getting the points across? Visual presentations are interesting because not everybody uses them. Sometimes students will decide to opt out of a visual for the final defense. I've seen some people use visuals because they like the distraction. They like that it allows something for the audience to look at rather than just them. But you also want to make sure that if you do have a visual, you avoid gigantic block text, that you avoid just not having enough color or light to see what you need the audience to see, and that you make it interesting. You give them something to look at rather than just a whole bunch of words. I like to throw in some visuals just because it catches your attention. And also, I would avoid using distracting transitions like the swipe left, pixelated up, bouncing things. You want it to look as professional as possible. So just simple and easy to read. That's really what it comes down to. The last part of this is, or the second to last part of this is just direction, which in this case means what you want it to look like. This is really more about, this tends to be more virtual nowadays, but these direction tips can also be for in person. You want to make sure that you look a certain way, that you have enough lighting, that you you're just not doing any distracting noises. When it comes to this, I think we've learned a lot about direction in the last year with everything going virtual. If you've been in a lot of Zoom meetings lately, if you've been doing a lot of other virtual sort of meetings, you pretty much should know what this is about. But I do recommend a good pair of headphones if you've got a lot of noise, just to minimize that noise distraction, and that you make sure that your camera's working ahead of time if you are going to be presenting virtually. Highly, highly recommend it. And so now we get into the actual defense and what it is. Realistically, the defense is just to demonstrate to your committee that you know what you're doing, that you know exactly what you've written and what it says, and now you're conveying it to people more than just them. You're conveying it to a larger academic audience, people who are going to read it someday, people in other fields, people in other universities. You really want to make sure that the committee is convinced that you know what you're doing. Sometimes other speeches, they're about these other things, entertaining, debating, appealing. Really, the defense is just informative. It doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't have to be big and spectacular. It just has to be accurate and straightforward. If it's a little boring, that's okay. That's all right. And this is advice that I collected from previous thesis and dissertation defenders from the last couple of years. These are people that I knew personally that have said things that I thought were relevant. Hearing again, even if you've already seen this presentation, if you've already heard these things, look at them again. It's important for you to internalize this. Your advisor wouldn't let you get this far if they didn't believe you were ready to defend. I've given 100 presentations and 100 classes, and it's always the same set of skills. As long as you understand the basics, everything falls into place. I was scared that I wasn't going to pass, but my committee was much less scary when the day came than they were in my head. And compared to the actual work I put into writing the thesis, this was nothing. I already did the hardest part. And just keep all that in mind. I think that really sums up all there is to the thesis defense. If you're still nervous about it, you can always just practice more or come and see me, and I'll tell you, hey, this didn't make sense, or slow down here. I'll talk more about me at the end of this. Now we're going to get into the fun part of this, which is like what to expect the day of and what to expect right afterwards. So this is all of that. Make sure that you prep beforehand. I highly recommend you make cue cards, even if you're going to be talking virtually. Make the cue cards anyway. Maybe the internet will go out. Maybe a file will get corrupted. You never know. Plus, I like to have things physical that I can touch and move around, have a little bit more sense of control. You're not fidgeting with tabs or other digital things. Even if you're not going to use them, sometimes the act of just making a cue card's nice. Have a roadmap. In your case, that might be a physical roadmap that you actually say this one comes first, this one comes second. It might be more like a paper or bullet points. It might be something that represents what you're doing. I personally had sticky notes, a roadmap of sticky notes that went from 1 to 20, and those were all my points. I highly recommend you have a visual aid, even if it's just a backdrop with your name and the title of your work. That's what I recommend. You don't have to do that. That's kind of just some advice for you. I definitely recommend having something for the audience to look at occasionally. 2, arrive early. That counts even if you're going to be virtual. Make sure that you know that the room link is working, that you're going to be in the right place, and that other people know where to go. Again, I recommend you print out your materials, especially handouts. Now, handouts are virtual, so you don't really have to worry about that. But again, I recommend physical printing if you can manage it. Have a bottle of water with a cap. Even if you don't think you're going to use it, it's still kind of nice to have it, pick it up. It's a nice distraction, a nice excuse for a break if you need one. Make sure that you thank the committee before you do anything else. Before you introduce yourself or do anything else, thank the committee for being there. Really important to be courteous. Sometimes it makes a huge difference. You never know. Introduce yourself and the title of your work. Obviously, at that point, you want to do that. That's just good form. I don't think I introduced myself at the beginning of this presentation, so do as I say and not as I do. Once you're actually giving the presentation, don't explain every little thing. Your defense really isn't to explain everything, all the background, all the research. It's really just a matter of what you think is important. Usually that's your introduction, like what you're doing and why, your maybe part of the methodology, what you actually did, part of your research, which is what you found out, and part of your conclusion, which is why it's important. If you haven't finished your conclusion yet, or you're still working on one aspect or another, just don't emphasize that. Don't emphasize what you haven't finished yet or what you're still planning to do. Emphasize what you've done, and the rest will kind of fall in with questions. That's what I recommend. Use present tense to discuss the project. Your project is always ongoing, especially at this stage. It's not complete yet. Don't say, I finished this or I completed this. Really, you want to say, I'm working on this, I'm doing this, I I'm still in the progress of doing this and say I'm done with it. You're really not at this stage. Make sure you're confident about what you're saying, so avoid saying, I think it's this, or I'm pretty sure that we did this, or I kind of don't remember, but I think it's this. If you can't remember, don't say it. That's really what I would recommend. If you need to remember it, remember it. If you can't remember it, leave it out. It's better to say, oh, it's better to have the committee go, did you leave this out, or what about this, and to say, yes, I'm glad you asked, rather than say, oh, I don't remember. Don't stray. This is really, 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 really important. That's why I emphasized it in bold here. Don't stray into other things that are not relevant to your thesis. If you didn't write it in the project, or you're not planning to write it in the project, or it's like cool, but it's something else that somebody else is talking about elsewhere in another project, don't mention it. Don't talk about it. It's not your work. It's not like relevant to your work. Just leave it out. Honestly, just talk about what you are talking about, and that's it. That should be good enough. Unless it's to answer a question by your committee. Your committee might say, well, are you aware of this other project that's similar to yours, or this other topic that you didn't research but I think is relevant? And you could say, yes, I considered it, or no, I've never considered it. And that's the only case that you would actually mention it. But if not, just mention exactly what's in the work, and that's it. Don't mention things you thought you wanted to include but didn't, or maybe want to include later. Afterward, once you finish defending, these are also really important to remember. The committee will have questions for you. They usually go one at a time. They usually try not to interrupt each other. I've seen them kind of interrupt each other or go back like, oh yeah, the Dr. So-and-so made me remember about this other thing I wanted to say. But mostly they go one by one by one, and that's it. Don't interrupt them. That's really, really the big one. Don't interrupt them. They're gonna have a lot to say. Probably sometimes they have more of a comment, and it's really more about addressing their concerns than actual interrupting them and saying, oh, well, I thought about this, or maybe I should have done this. It's rude. It makes the time go faster. It makes the time go slower, rather. And there's no real sense in being defensive about it, because the committee really just wants to help you have the best product that you can have. So don't interrupt them. That's really what it comes down to. Be as courteous as possible. Make sure, you thank them going in, thank them going out, thank them when they give you advice, or after they give you a question, say, that's a great question. Just be really polite to the committee. Clarify something before moving on. So don't think that, oh, just because I finished answering the question means we can move on. Or move on to another question. Say, did that answer your question? Or do you have another question, or something like that before you start on another thing? Don't assume that you're done. That can be kind of rude as well. Just, again, give them a polite nudge. Say, did you have any other questions? Is there anything else I can answer for you? Is there anything else you want me to know, or want me to say? Something like that, something to that effect. And don't talk down to them, of course. Like, they're your professors, or your peers, or your mentors in a way. Peers, maybe not so much. They are just other professionals who have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge they want to impart. So it's good to say, well, I appreciate your comments, or whatever. Thank them and the audience at the end before they go into deliberation, and then just be patient. Most committee deliberations are very quick. I haven't seen one go more than 10 minutes. And I think even then that was technical difficulties. It's very quick. They usually decide in a minute, or sometimes 2. It's really, at this point, like, they pretty much made their decisions. And the last step is to practice. If you're still uncomfortable, if you're still not confident with what you are working with, practice, 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 practice all day. If you need help, if you need my specific help, you can contact me. Again, I will email this link to everybody at the end of the presentation. If you need to set up an appointment with me specifically, that's available right there. If you want to reserve a study space here in Pellegrino 203, we've got 2 study rooms that for graduate students specifically, so you can make those appointments there. And of course, contact us at writingconsultant@tamiu.edu. There's my phone number there on the screen, and we're located in Pellegrino 203 on TAMIU campus.